boy has made it through the woods, the farm, the city, and is now dipping his toe into the depths of what once was. Welcome to the Inside Lore series, where in today's episode, we will be discussing the flooded tunnels. This video will be divided up into two sections, the first being all in-game confirmed information, and the second being my own theories about the overarching story within the world of Inside. Picking up where we last left off, the boy steals a submersible from two, presumably, scientists. The boy takes the sub down into the depths that surprisingly go quite deep, where he discovers that, essentially, an entire city was flooded. Remnants remain, but it's clear something happened that resulted in a large majority of this section of the city being destroyed. Moving throughout these dead waters, the boy eventually finds what I assume to be a destroyed lab where drowned foliage can still be seen pressing up against the glass. Pressing a button, 3 pods roll towards the boy, and after doing his best Indiana Jones impression, dodges them. Moving on, the boy enters a forested area that looks extremely similar to the starting area, though this time everything looks artificial. Returning to his sub, we get a glimpse at some swimming long-haired creature. Going down the stairwell of an old building, we encounter another orb, and after solving the puzzle, disable it. This time, however, we can see that the mind control cap we wear stops working as soon as the orb is disabled. This, to me, further proves the theory about the orbs being a sort of mind control cap booster. Continuing on, the boy comes face to face with this creature stalking us. It appears to be a human with long hair that can breathe underwater and is scared of, if not pacified by, the light. When not pacified, the long-haired creature will attack the sub, breaking the glass and drowning the boy. We are able to eventually get past this creature and break into open waters. Going to the left, as soon as we surface, we can find a ladder that, when hit, creates a path for us to find another orb. We then beach our sub, push through a set of doors, and fall into what I assume to be an old rail yard. In the distance, we can hear weird sounds, like a pulse of some kind. Moving along, we find a pressure pad that requires 20 sleepwalkers in order to open the door. The sound also becomes louder as it belongs to some kind of pulse that periodically shakes the foundation of this place. Finding a mind control cap, the boy accidentally breaks it off its cord, yet his control remains functional. He then attracts any and all sleepwalkers around him to follow his every command. While hunting for sleepwalkers, it's interesting to note that we can find 3 of them inside a pod, further lending credence to my theory of the pod's usage. Also, most of these sleepwalkers wear hard hats and look to be construction workers, so perhaps they were being used to clean up this place before the boy found them. While hunting for more sleepwalkers, the boy can use some of them to break off a wooden plank and find an underground cavern with multiple feral dogs. Grabbing a torch, the boy scares them off long enough for him to find yet another orb. This time, when disconnecting it, the dogs run away scared. Going up to the top level, the boy uses the sleepwalkers to throw him up on a ledge where he can find a dead sleepwalker. Nothing around indicates how they died, but what is noticeable up here is the cross in the foreground. This being the first instance of a religious object raises some interesting questions about the world at large, but there's not really much to go off of right now, so we'll just pocket it for later. Anyway, after all the sleepwalkers are on the pressure pad, we are met with a massive shockwave. Stepping out into the noise, a shockwave disables the mind control cap, and the boy stands face to face with his next challenge. One we will cover next time, so let's talk about what we've seen so far. So this city, wherever it may be, was, in my opinion, intentionally flooded. Now, there are 2 possibilities of who or what flooded this city. Building off of the massive world-ending parasitic worm outbreak we've been talking about for the past couple of episodes, then perhaps the survivors of this city intentionally flooded this district to stem the tide of the outbreak. Or, since these worms tend to like water, maybe an infected individual purposefully flooded this district to make a larger breeding ground for these worms. If this is true, then that would mean the infected individuals would still be able to retain some of their mental functions, meaning they aren't your typical brain-dead zombies. Whatever the reason for this flooding aside, let's move on to these long-haired creatures. While they become much more of a nuisance later in the game, currently they act as an interesting thing. I had a thought that the one we discover may have come out of the pods that almost crushed us, this, but I wasn't able to confirm it. Besides that, there's not much to go off of, so we'll save the discourse about these guys for a later date when they become more prominent. Other than that, I don't have a good name to call these guys other than long-haired creatures. Mermaid or siren doesn't seem applicable because 1, they aren't half fish, and 2, they don't sing to you. So if you have a good nickname, let me know in the comments, or else I'll just call them swimmers, which yeah, it's not the best name. The last little bit of interesting lore here is the clear reconstruction effort we discover. Trucks, tracks, and hard hats are everywhere in this section of the map. It appears that these survivors are using sleepwalkers as laborers to help reclaim at least some of their lost land. This apocalypse that we are privy to isn't eternal. The survivors are clearly trying to make things better. Now, they're using sleepwalkers to do this, but we don't know if these people were enslaved against their will or are incurable humans infected with these worms, given a new purpose in life. I'd like to think the latter because that means this society is at least somewhat good, but then that creates a whole other moral conundrum that we'll just not get into. Still, this does shed some light on the current state of the world. There was some kind of disaster, there were survivors, and now they're rebuilding. Will this new world be better than the last? Only time will tell.